When he saw the newborn in his mother's arms, the boy declared, "She's not my sister." His parents dismissed it as jealousy and decided to take a DNA test to prove otherwise. However, the test results uncovered a shocking truth. Lana and Curtis were envied by many for their seemingly perfect relationship. Their wedding was a fairy tale affair, surrounded by loved ones on a sunny day. They settled in the New York suburbs, deeply in love and living harmoniously. Both worked hard during the week, cherishing weekends with friends. As they contemplated expanding their family, Lana became pregnant. She opted to stay home full-time to care for their child, supported by Curtis's thriving business. Despite the added responsibilities, their life remained nearly flawless. Lana ensured the home was filled with the comforting sense of lavender and home-cooked meals, meticulously maintaining cleanliness even during her pregnancy's final weeks. Then Fred was born, their first son. He was very affectionate with his parents, only crying much in the early morning hours. From early on, the baby showed signs of being highly intelligent, which surprised Lana and Curtis. When the boy reached school age, the couple considered enrolling him in a private school offering special classes for more advanced students. Curtis was excited by the possibility that his son could be a gifted genius. "Calm down. He's just a child, my love. We have time to evaluate this," said Lana, trying not to stifle her husband's excitement. And Fred grew smarter each day. He easily completed the homework from school and wanted more. Before long, Lana became pregnant again. When they told him the news, Fred loved the idea. He often leaned over to hug her belly and listen to the fetus inside. Though only 5 years old, he would say he was trying to protect his mother from harm, and Lana found that very touching. The baby wasn't even born yet, and Fred already showed how much he loved it. She couldn't imagine a life better than hers, but things were about to change dramatically. Lana didn't want Fred to be alone when she went into labor. After all, Curtis would be with her in the maternity ward. So she asked her mother, Clarice, to stay with the boy. It turns out that Lana's second delivery was more challenging than her first. She had prepared to have a natural birth, as she had with Fred, and was ready to do what was necessary for as long as it took. 2 hours later, Lana was exhausted and drenched in sweat as the baby resisted being born. The medical team realized something was wrong and decided on emergency tests. Lana was determined but lacked the strength to continue. The doctor concluded that a natural birth was impossible and opted for an emergency cesarean section. Curtis, feeling overwhelmed, supported the decision. Lana, sedated, agreed. However, Curtis, with a fear of blood, fainted as the procedure began. But the birth was a success. Lana was well and stable, as was the child, a beautiful baby girl whom they named Sarah. Curtis recovered consciousness and stayed at his wife's side, still under the effects of the medications, admiring her little baby. The first time Sarah nursed was a beautiful moment that melted the hearts of both parents. "Another little miracle that we created, my love," said Curtis, kissing his wife's forehead while the baby continued nursing on her breast. "I can't wait for Fred to meet her. He's going to be the best big brother in the world," said Lana, who couldn't stop looking at the baby adoringly. When Lana was discharged and could go home, Fred was waiting on the porch, jumping with excitement and impatience next to his grandma for the arrival of his little sister. He ran to see his mother and sister when the car door opened. Clarice went to help her daughter get out of the car with the baby in her arms. But what happened next? No one expected. "Fred, this is your sister Sarah. Come say hi to her," said Curtis, while Lana lowered the baby so he could see the new family member. But instead of smiling and being happy with seeing the girl, Fred frowned and looked coldly at the baby. He shook his head and said something that left everyone shocked and confused. "She isn't my sister," he said, looking at his parents. For a moment, everyone fell silent, wondering if the boy was serious or only joking. It was Clarice, his grandmother, who broke the silence. "What did you say, Fred?" she asked, but the boy didn't respond. "Why do you say that? She really is your sister," Curtis intervened, asking him to look at the baby again. Fred did what his father asked, with a frown on his face and eyes that seemed to ask a series of silent questions. He wanted to know why the baby had blonde hair and blue eyes when everyone in his family had brown hair and brown eyes. Despite his young age, Fred's question challenged his parents' and grandmother's sense of logic. "It's hard to explain, sweetie, but this happens sometimes." And with time, her hair and eyes could darken. "She was just born," said Lana. Fred shook his head again, making it clear that he didn't accept that response, and ran into the house. Lana and Curtis looked at each other with concern, not understanding why their boy was saying such things about their newborn. Could it be jealousy? Fear of losing his parents' love? Seeing the couple's concern, Clarice entered the conversation, saying they shouldn't worry and that it was a normal response. Soon, Fred would see that his position as the son will not be threatened by the baby, and everything will be fine. Make him feel loved and wanted. Clarice advised the couple to ask for Fred's help, believing it would change his attitude towards Sarah. However, Fred continued to distance himself from her, often stating she wasn't his sister. Curtis reprimanded Fred for this behavior, finding it unacceptable. Lana hoped involving Fred in caring for Sarah would help him bond with her, but Fred remained indifferent. Despite their efforts, Fred's skepticism persisted, threatening the once perfect family they had built. Lana had to insist for Fred to play with Sarah, but he showed little interest. This saddened Lana and Curtis deeply, seeing their children unable to bond as siblings. Finally, Curtis couldn't take it any longer and persuaded Lana to let him take the boy to a psychologist. Perhaps this was an exaggerated reaction of jealousy, and they needed professional help. At a loss for what to do, Lana agreed. The following week, they took Fred to see Warren Robertson, a child psychologist. But even after 4 sessions, the older brother remained undeterred. He couldn't explain why or how, but he was convinced that the girl living in his house and nursing from his mother's breasts was not his real sister. Warren saw Fred as a brilliant and logical boy and proposed an experiment. He called Lana and Curtis into his office and said the couple should do a DNA test. Fred is only 6 years old, but knows what a DNA test is, and he's a very rational kid. "So, I suggest you take the test, and when he sees the physical proof that Sarah is his sister, Fred will no longer have these concerns," said the psychologist. Lana thought the idea to be a little radical. She worried that it would appear that they also had doubts as to the father of the child. But Curtis reassured her, saying the test was only a formality, just to help Fred accept Sarah into the family once and for all. So Lana agreed. It would be good for the entire family. She didn't know she would have a surprise that would change her life forever. The DNA test was expensive, but the couple went forward with the idea. They collected blood from both parents and little Sarah, sent it to a laboratory, and waited for the results to arrive in a few days. While waiting, Curtis, Lana, and Sarah spent wonderful days together. The little girl was growing quickly. She couldn't walk yet, but could sit up and would try to crawl around the room. When she played, she would let out the most beautiful laughs that only babies are capable of, that melt even the coldest of hearts. She adored her parents and got along well with her grandma Clarice. Whenever she saw the older woman, she held out her arms, asking to sit on her lap. Her eyes, always brilliant and curious, illuminated her parents' days from the moment they woke up. Caring for the baby was challenging, yet it was also a delight for them. But they felt sad they could not play with the whole family because Fred refused to interact with Sarah. And this was not a personality trait of the boy, as he interacted normally with all the other children in the neighborhood. The tests were ready by Friday morning, and Curtis went online to get the results. On reading the document, he felt his heart stop beating. "That's not possible," he exclaimed. He called Lana, who came running with the baby in her arms. She read it and sat down, stunned. She reread it. She wanted to ensure she understood everything. The results showed that Sarah's DNA did not combine with that of Lana and Curtis. He also sat in stunned shock. Had Lana cheated on him? Is that why the DNA didn't match? He called the laboratory to make sure they understood the results correctly. The doctor confirmed everything. The results showed beyond a doubt that Sarah was not the daughter of Curtis, nor the daughter of Lana. "But how is that possible if she came out of me?" shouted Lana, crying and asking God how that was possible. Curtis tried to console his wife, saying they should repeat the exam. After all, errors happen. But she didn't want to hear it and continued crying until she suddenly stopped and asked, Did you see everything from her being born and put in my arms? Do you remember everything? Because I was anesthetized. Curtis said he also didn't see anything because he had passed out after seeing the blood from the surgery. When he woke up, the baby was already in her arms, and fear gripped the couple as they suspected a switch at the maternity ward. Despite loving the baby, DNA tests confirmed she wasn't theirs. They struggled with the decision to pursue the truth or continue as if Sarah was theirs. Curtis was distracted at work, and Lana's love for Sarah wavered. The couple investigated and found their biological child with a young couple living in poor conditions. The young couple, attached to the baby, faced the same dilemma. Both families decided to exchange babies, a heartbreaking decision for all involved. Receiving a new child, they felt a mix of indifference and excitement, unsure of these little girls who were their legitimate daughters. As they drove home, Curtis pondered how long it would take for the child to recognize Lana as her mother, and for Lana to feel for her what she had felt for Sarah. Fred, their first child, had immediately known the new baby was not his real sister. But when they arrived home, Fred looked at the baby and smiled, declaring her his sister. Over time, the new girl became part of their family, with Fred lovingly caring for her. Eventually, they corrected a lip condition, making her even more beautiful. Fred and Sarah grew up as best friends, and to this day, no one can explain how Fred knew the new girl wasn't his sister.